Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is it, the final panel. Please take your seats. Thank you. All right. Okay, we're almost there, nearing the finish line. What a day this has been. I'm going to welcome you now to the last panel of this most excellent day, the first ever Canadian Genomics Summit. I've been up here already, so you probably know who I am in case you got here late. My name is Rob Annan. I am President and CEO of Genome Canada. And a big thanks to all of you for coming here today, taking part in all of this. This last panel is slightly different from what we've done so far. I'm really excited to be participating in this. As I said off the top, this is the 25th anniversary for Genome Canada. But it's not just the 25th anniversary for Genome Canada. It's also the 25th anniversary for 6 regional genome centers who are our key partners in the delivery of national programs. Technically, actually, it's the 25th anniversary of 5 of the centers. Genome Alberta is only 20 years old, but that's a long story that we can talk about at the bar later. Regardless, it's a big day for all of them, just as it is for us. And it really does, most of you in the room are aware of how we work, but I do just want to point out that, this is a unique model that we have here. It's a federated model that in many ways reflects the nature of the country. We have, kind of a shared national identity, but really Canada is a nation of regions. And I think one of the key reasons for our success is that we work closely with teams of amazing, dedicated people who have deep knowledge of their local ecosystems, the universities, the companies, and also the provincial governments and realities in each of those regions. And it's really the push and pull tension between the regions and between the federal government and those regional priorities that leads to a true national approach. And I think about the very thoughtful observations from Elder Commanda this morning. She talked about 7 CEOs, 7 grandfather teachings. I can say that this group really does, in many ways, embody many of those teachings. Thinking here about things like trust, wisdom, bravery, usually love. But I am fortunate to work with this group of really thoughtful leaders and their respective teams. So I'm going to invite them up to the stage right now to please join me in the seats that we see up here. I'll just introduce them by name, and then we're going to take a second to sort of do introductions once we're seated. So I welcome Suzanne Gill from Genome BC, Steve Armstrong from Genome Atlantic, David Bailey from Genome Alberta, Mike Say from Genome Prairie, Stephen Cummings from Ontario Genomics, and Josette Landry from Genome Quebec. So, please join me in welcoming them to the stage. Okay, so why don't we start off, as I said, rather than give introductions that speak at length to your illustrious careers, I thought instead we would just take 2 minutes each, to provide just a brief set of comments about yourself, about kind of the journey that led you to the role that you're in today, and maybe kind of what inspired you to take on the role you have. And Suzanne, why don't we start at your end, and you can kick us off.
All right, 2 minutes and counting. So I'm 3rd generation Canadian. I have a passion for science. I am a failed attempt at being a vet. And somewhere during my journey of becoming, I did my master's in science at UBC and my MBA in Toronto. I was employee number 3 in Toronto in 2002. And that was an incredible beginning of a journey of my career where there was an incredible excitement around these $25 million large-scale sequencing projects that were going to change the game for Canada. And that just, for a young person beginning their journey in real life, it was incredibly inspirational. Spent a couple of years there, did a decade or so at Genome BC, left for 4 years to do industrial R&D for the tech sector with the supercluster program, and then came back as CEO in 2022. But one of the parts of my journey at Genome BC was I was there in 2007 when Genome BC was able to design and make design programs and make strategic investments for the province of BC in areas of strength that would benefit BC, and we've had the support of the province in order to do that. And that was game-changing for the organization and also our research community in British Columbia.
Awesome. Thanks, Suzanne. Steve?
So thank you. A pleasure to be here. And for the record, I don't love any of my colleagues. They're all right. A pleasure to be here. And in terms of the journey, I was actually involved with the Genome Canada Enterprise before there was a Genome Canada Enterprise. And there were a lot of very influential folks across the country that were coming up with a vision for something that would be called Genome Canada. Hit fast forward to late calendar 1999, I was at a dinner meeting and there was some discussion about that vision, as well as some discussion about how many genome centers there would be. And the action item coming out of that was assigned to me was set up a meeting with Kevin Lynch, who was then the Deputy Minister of Industry federally, along with Atlantic key stakeholders, VPRs, key researchers, provincial government folks, chambers of commerce, and come up with a choreographed set of key messages to sell him on the value proposition for a genome center in the Atlantic region. Hit fast forward to the federal budget of 2000, Genome Canada was established to the tune of $160 million for large-scale research, as well as the establishment of 5 genome centers. So it was a proud day for the region, an inflection point, obviously, for Genome Canada. We're now at the $4 billion mark, and all joking aside, it's been a pleasure to be part of the journey.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. David?
Hi, I'm David Bailey with Genome Alberta, and how I got here is that I was working with the federal government in a job I really liked. I was a research scientist, trained as a geneticist in animal science, really, and much like in the previous panel, Christine and Michael, I'm a farm boy at heart, and so genes and plants and animals have just has been a passion for me my whole life. So when it was in that federal position in 1998, I was invited to a meeting in Toronto that Martin Godbout held, and it was really about the creation or the thought of creating Genome Canada. Fast forward 7 years later, I get calls from a headhunter at Christmas saying, have you heard of Genome Alberta? Which I hadn't. It had just been created, and they were looking for a new CEO. So really among my crowds here, I'm really the youngest one in terms of the family, but also the longest serving CEO in the whole enterprise, and because I really love what we're doing. I think the potential for the next 25 years is enormous, and glad to be part of this group.
Awesome. Thanks, David. All right, from the youngest to the most handsome, Mike.
Thank you, Rob. Mike Say, Genome Prairie, and we cover Saskatchewan and Manitoba from there. Cliche, I know. I'm a farm kid from West Central Saskatchewan, born and raised. Absolutely have a passion for agri-food production and everything in between. I've worked everywhere from the farm gate to the fork over 35 years. A U of S and UNB graduate, but certainly I, as opposed to Steve, I do love these guys. And it certainly is, it's a passion and a curiosity I have. I came to the enterprise, I guess now about 6 years ago, and it's an absolutely glorious and challenging journey to be a part of. The things that we do together are truly extraordinary, and I too am looking forward to the next 25 years.
Awesome, thanks. Steve?
My name's Steve Cummings. I'm the interim CEO of Ontario Genomics, so pleased to be here. I served on the board at Ontario Genomics for over 10 years, primarily in the audit committee.
Steve, sorry, your mic's not working and it looks like they're coming with a microphone here for you. He's just talking about how much he appreciates Genome Canada. Happy to translate for him while we get things set up. That's okay.
Would you like me to go?
Yeah, why don't we go then to Josette, and we'll come back to Steve. Thanks.
Perfect. So hi, everyone. I'm Josette Landry. Like some of my colleagues, I've loved science from a young age, and I'm a farm girl. But I've always been teased that I'm not really good at geography. So I would like to point out that we had agreed to go in geographical order, and that some of my colleagues, that I won't name, decided to maybe not sit at the right spot. So I have a PhD in genetics, and I got my degree at UBC at a time when a lot of new up-and-coming researchers, some of whom are here today, were just starting. Mark O'Mara, Steve Jones, Wyeth Wasserman. So it was a really exciting time to be doing genetics and genomics. First human genome was being sequenced, and along the years, I've had the chance to put those skills into an applied setting. I've run a startup in genomics. I've run a sequencing facility. I've been able to work at a funding agency. So all of these, what seem like disparate, very diverse elements of my career, just seemed to actually make sense when I saw the role for the CEO of Genome Quebec being advertised. And I thought, that's what I've been working towards, all these different pieces. This was the role where my technology background, my entrepreneurial spirit, my love of science could come together. And the reason why I'm so excited that I'm now in this role for now my 3rd year is the camaraderie with all of these lovely people who've really accepted me as a newest addition to the enterprise.
Awesome. Steve, back to you.
Back to me.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Not yet.
Okay. Steve Cummings. I'm the interim CEO at Ontario Genomics. How I got there is I'd been on the board of Ontario Genomics for over 10 years, primarily in the with the finance speciality, chair of the audit committee, and so on. And my lead into the board was that I've spent many years in Ontario's venture capital system with MDS Capital, Lumira Capital, investing in biotechnology from seed stage all the way up to NASDAQ-listed companies. So I've seen commercialization firsthand from that point of view. I'm passionate about the opportunity that the genomics innovation ecosystem represents for Ontario. From my perspective, this is an inflection point. After 25 years of investing in this technology, I see the seeds of future GDP growth for Ontario. What I also see is, a lot of the initial investment was in healthcare. The maturing of genomic innovation and the application broadening over the last 10 years really does speak to huge opportunity for the food and ag sector in Canada, where globally we punch above our weight. Obviously, natural resources, the application for waste, and so on. So I do really see the biorevolution as something akin to the Industrial Revolution many years ago, and this is an inflection point. So I'm delighted to serve and happy to work with everybody on this stage for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. So obviously a diversity of backgrounds, which is super interesting, and is reflected as well in the diversity of sort of activities that the respective centers are engaged in. And there's a lot of obviously biologists, evolutionary biologists in the crowd here, and you, as you know, right? We were all created at the same moment and at that time, with very similar conditions. But over the last 25 years, there has been an adaptation to diverse local conditions. And because of that, each center has its own flavor. It adds, much like Canada, right? It adds up to something really powerful and interesting and successful. But there is a lot of variability across the board. And now I actually feel like I'm doing cross-country checkup here. It's like, okay, so why don't we, again, coast to coast, what I'd like to ask is perhaps to give a bit of a flavor of the way that your center is engaging with your community is by perhaps sharing like a success story, something that you can point to that talks about how genomics is being applied in your regions, something that demonstrates that sort of tangible impact that you and your colleagues at your own center are proud of. Let's just go down the line again, Suzanne.
Down the line, okay.
Yeah, simple.
So I'll just pick, carrying on from one of the panels this morning, in the area of cancer. So we have about, as Genome BC, about $900 million in the human health portfolio. And cancer is really where you're seeing impacts in terms of genomics applications in the clinic. And really there is a story, the Michael Smith Genome Sciences Center, and Steve Jones is in the room here today, was actually embedded in the BC Cancer Agency in '99. It was the first in the world event where you had a sequencing center embedded in a cancer care center. And that dream of being able to change medicine for cancer patients and care and treatment was really a foundation of the inspiration around investing in genomics in cancer. So our chair of the board, Dr. Don Ricks of Genome BC, was the founder of Life Labs, and he had cancer. He had his genome sequenced, and he looked around the world who could do it. He came to Vancouver and did it at the Genome Sciences Center. That was in 2010. There's probably lots of references to that paper. That was 2010, 2011. The personalized oncogenomics program started in 2012 with 30 patients. It is now over 3,000 patients, but it's still not standard of care. It is still on the research side. So the vision of, if we can accelerate the adoption and translation of genomic into the clinic in cancer, you can imagine a future where anyone walking through the door of a cancer agency, maybe before, I heard lots of stories this morning, of you could have basically game-changing care and treatment as soon as you walk in through the door. And I think that's the vision and part of the impact we have. I'll just give a shout out to the hereditary cancer program. We have Addie, who received an incredible award, sitting in the back there around her work with the Genome Sciences Center, and Intan Schrader, game-changing work around being able to do cascade testing and identify the parent of origins or variations from where your cancer may come from. Will just change the game in order to be able to very efficient testing for cancer care. Anyway, I'll just leave it at there.
Yeah, awesome. I know we could have a whole talk about any one of these subjects, so thanks, Suzanne. Steve?
So Genome Atlantic has a very private sector driven portfolio. The vast majority of our projects have a private sector leader, and we're trying to de-risk business expenditure in R&D. But when we're asked to come up with one success story from the past, the one that I reach back to is an oldie but a goodie, and it's entitled, What If We Could Fix Hearts Before They Were Broken? And the story goes like this. For quite some time, imagine a scenario where you were losing members of your family over time, one or more members that would just suddenly drop dead of a fatal arrhythmia. The first warning sign that there was a problem was they dropped dead. It was like a breaker tripped, the lights went off, and the lights sadly would never come back on. This was going on for decades and decades and decades with a number of families in Newfoundland and Labrador, all linked to ARVC. Enter Genome Canada funding in 2005. It allowed the group at Eastern Health and Memorial to accelerate understanding the genetic predisposition for the disease. And in the end, they determined it was a single mutation that predisposed you to that potentially fatal arrhythmia at some point in your life. And in the male population, 80% would be dead by age 50 unless you intervened. So those that tested positive, if you will, for having that mutation were given the opportunity to have an ICD or a defibrillator proactively put into their chest. There's more than 300 that have been installed to date. All 300 had their lives extended significantly as a result of that. And while it's impossible to put a price tag on the value of those lives saved, as an organization, it allowed us to tell a story that any funder can obviously relate to. And by extension, it helped us sell the power and promise of genomics from a more global fundraising perspective.
Yeah, that is such a great story. Thanks, Steve. David?
That's a great example because one of my close friends actually benefited from that technology, Steve, so that's a great addition. For Genome Alberta, what I think we would term success is the creation of these large databases that really have become very, very functional and applied to by many companies. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is the Human Metabolome database and the food database, which are both created at the University of Alberta under the guidance, I guess, of Dr. David Wishart. Those are constantly being in use by companies all around the world, so great resource right there. It's Canadian technology. The Resistome database, a comprehensive multi-omics database of more than 38,000 bloodstream infections. That's led by Ian Lewis at the University of Calgary. And then very applied pig database, a database of pig genome data to compare traits and solve health challenges. That's led by Michael Dick at the University of Alberta. So to me, those are huge applications that industry can get behind and look into see for breeding programs, etc. So, or food safety, food security, ingredients, allergies. These are the databases to look at. So I'd have to say they're really good. And our mandate is slightly changing. All of us here are getting more emphasis from our government funders to do more in commercialization. Having access to these databases gives us access to other international databases, so we even have more data to look at together when you can share. So I think it's a really bright future ahead for us to kind of monopolize some of these data sets and benefit Canada.
Awesome, thanks. Mike?
Thanks, David. I thought long and hard about what to talk about in terms of where has genomics made the greatest contribution. And it should come as no surprise. I'll limit my comments primarily to agri-food and agri-food production. And certainly the contributions are there in a $75 billion cereals industry, or a $45 billion canola industry, or a $10 billion pulse industry. But I wanted to get a little more specific, and I wanted to talk about a particular institute that is now 50 years old as well, too, and that's VIDO in Saskatoon, the Vaccine and Infectious Disease Organization. So it predates us by 25 years. But that being said, over the years we've been in existence, there's been numerous projects and well over $50 million of investment in genomics projects vis-a-vis VIDO. Quite frankly, VIDO would not be the institution it is today without the support of the Genomics Enterprise. And most recently, you may have seen, a testament to what it has become over those 50 years, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness out of the European Union has seen fit to invest a further $24 million in VIDO. So others on the globe are recognizing that we truly have a national asset there that is ready and willing and able to help us prepare in both animal and human health vaccine. And as a result of the journey of COVID, now has biomanufacturing capabilities as well. And as the only large animal level 4 containment facility in the country, it certainly has become truly a national asset. And I think we could all be proud to say that it exists with the support of the Genomics Enterprise.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Awesome. Steve?
Thank you. I can give many stories. I've had to pick one. It's been so tough. But I'm going to pick up on the flagship that Genome Canada, the Precision Health Initiative, and give you an example of some of the work that has been developed over the last 10 years in Ontario. The story that I've chosen to explain to you is really on data and data sharing. And in particular, with regards to rare disease research, that over the last 10 years, Ontario and Genome Canada have focused a lot of investment in that area. One of the projects that we collaborated on was with Dr. Kim Boycott at CHIO on a program called Care for Rare. This was an incredible project that led to a testing clinic being put in place in Canada. And the ultimate outcome of that is that answers are being got in hours and days and weeks, not years, which used to be the case when we took a test and they'd be sent down to the US for analysis and so on. So through the Global Alliance for Genetics and Health Data, solutions are being shared around the globe today. What is the advantage of that with data analysis and personalized healthcare and so on? Well, I'll give you an example. There was a case ultimately which was solved at the 18th year of a youth. He had a rare disease from birth. The rare disease was initially misdiagnosed at birth. And for 18 years, the analysis from the medical community did not solve the problem. But they realized through work using genetic testing, applying AI into the model for faster rework of the results. They realized that they were able to identify a gene deficiency. Using a gene match process called the matchmaker exchange, answers were found in Holland to a very similar case to the gene deficiency that had occurred with this youth. So think about that. 18 years of investment in the healthcare, trying to understand a rare disease, 18 years of senior time that was spent, that was ultimately solved after 18 years through the development of analysis and comparisons with solutions around the globe. This is an outcome that is for everybody to witness.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And a great example, and actually one where many of us, if not all of us, have got sort of great success in terms of supporting what ended up being a national network. And back in the corner there, I think I see Kim and Francois and others leading that super important project. So thanks, Steve. That's a great project to highlight. Josette?
So everyone has given some very uplifting stories, so my apologies. I'm going to bring us back to darker times. The example that I wanted to highlight was one that brought us a really great ordeals, but at the same time, really great opportunities, and that's the start of COVID. So if we think back on those days, many of the public health labs were struggling with the sudden surge in demand for sequencing. And that was the case in Quebec, and they reached out to us, and with our CIS, our Center for Excellence and Services, in other words, our sequencing center, we're able to really help them and be part of the variant monitoring program. So that was the start of a relationship because there was a crisis, but over the years it evolved into a really tight partnership where we've continued to be involved in many projects, whether it now be for antimicrobial resistance, or we're talking about H5N1 earlier today. So it's interesting how relationships like that can evolve. And also for us, COVID presented many opportunities because we were involved in biobanks projects like the BQ-19, and we really ensured that researchers that were working on COVID-related projects had priority for our sequencing. So I think it's an example of how, even in bad situations, there are some positive impacts.
Yep, awesome, love it. Okay, so Josette took us to dark places, so let's lean into that. These are challenging times. We're all navigating, as we've heard already today, including from Yasser Nakhi this morning. There's a lot of political turmoil. We see that globally. We certainly see that here in Ottawa at the federal level, and I know many of you are navigating challenging conditions with your provinces and your regions and so on. But it's not just political, right? It's not just government things. There's lots of other challenges that you're facing. So I wouldn't mind, again, just to take a couple minutes each to talk a little bit about, kind of what keeps you up at night, effectively. What are the things that you're thinking about? Because again, I've heard, sort of people in Ottawa being accused of living in a bubble, right? When it comes to the country. And I do think it's really valuable to sort of, get a scope of kind of what's out there and how that's sort of translating into the realities in all of your respective regions. So Suzanne, why don't you...
I thought you were going to reverse the order. No?
Thought about it. I did think about it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think we heard a bit yesterday in the closed door session, as well as today. One of the biggest things with this bleeding edge of research is that you become, as you said, you're in a bubble. You're an elitist. It's not accessible. So equitable access to participate in the research and ensure that you have access to benefit from the tools and everything else that's going to come out of it is probably job number one. So very fortunate Genome BC's had the support of the province, and we've been able to invest in communication outreach from day one. And we do that through lots of different vehicles, but one of our flagship vehicles is the Gene School program. And it supports basically teens and the teachers that teach teens, science teachers, around what is genomics, how does it impact your daily lives. We reach 4,000, 5,000 students all across the province, rural, remote communities, including the Yukon. And that tool has been invaluable for us to get in front of the next generation of scientists. And we even have alumni from that program actually teaching the next generation. Very powerful. The second place we've made a concerted investment in is ensuring that we have access to the right folks to involve Indigenous participants in our research and First Nations. And so we've actually just put together an Indigenous Peoples Engagement Framework. That was in 2023. We hired Candace Loring, the first Director of Indigenous Initiatives and Relations. We've put together an action plan, resourced it with $5 million, part of which will support an expansion of silent genomes. But we are looking at things like, can we support Warren McTeague, who's actually in the UBC Forestry Program, with Sally Aiken there, and is going to take, as Dr. Kim Tallbear talked about yesterday, the Summer Internship for Indigenous Peoples Program. Take it in BC and go big. And so he's hiring, by the way, so the job posting is live on the Genome BC website. But those are the things that are important, and as an ecosystem investor in the people that will be doing the research and translate it into practice, we kind of need to do things in addition to the investment in scientific and technical expertise and all the great technical side of things. So that's just one example.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. And you and your team are doing phenomenal work on that education and outreach. So excellent example. Thanks. Steve.
So in terms of things that keep awake at night, if snoring was an Olympic sport, which it's not, my wife would be the 5-time gold medal champion. Hands down, that's guaranteed. Now, this is being taped. But there's a couple other things to keep me awake at night. One is the breadth of opportunity we have, but I'll focus on the more challenging side, which is really a combination between limitations of regulatory policy and genomics literacy, or maybe I should say genomics illiteracy. And, you know, as many in the room knows, public policy has lagged behind the pace at which technology is developed for decades. And that frustrates the private sector. It adds risk to their investment. It slows down the rate of technology adoption. And in some cases, it confuses the consumer and thereby exacerbates the genomics literacy challenge. And in the Atlantic region, it's relevant to a whole bunch of areas, but just as a few of many examples, the whole Atlantic salmon aquaculture space, with one exception, is restricted to one historic St. John River strain as opposed to being able to import other strains. Makes it more challenging to compete in terms of production against Norway and Chile and other places. One company that created a GMO salmon that would get to market twice as fast, AquaBounty, it took them 25 years to get it approved through the FDA. There's novel platforms for disease management in aquaculture that are on the horizon, yet I'm concerned about how long it's going to take for them to get approved. And last but not least, in terms of site license approval, environmental assessments in offshore wind and aquaculture and beyond, eDNA will no doubt eventually become the gold standard for doing that. But how long will it take for regulators to embrace that is something I'm not clear. So we're trying to address it in a couple of ways. One is by embedding those from the regulatory space into projects where possible, and we'll try and continue that going forward. Ideally, we'll have projects that will run in parallel, the new approach or the new technology with the old one, to try and earn support and buy-in. And the final example is to co-create projects with those that would not otherwise use genomics technologies. And one that we're just launching now is looking at port health with the major ports in the Atlantic region. By working with them and introducing eDNA to them in terms of looking at biodiversity, our hope is that we'll move the needle on acceptance of that technology.
Awesome. Yeah, those regulatory policy issues are so important. So thanks, Steve. David?
So one of the biggest challenges for us, and it goes back to data, it's actually building the talent pool to analyze these large data sets. And so, I mean, it's important to analyze and interpret and develop those algorithms, but do we have the people power to do that? And those that have that capacity are really in demand, and you really need them to be sector specific. It's much better if you understand the problem in your health area versus the problem you have in forestry or in agriculture or mining. So the challenge for us, and we ended up with creating about 5 years ago something called Bioinformatics Network, BioAlberta, and that was to train or retrain graduate students and postdocs and others that were come back into the area of bioinformatics. So that's happening. But then a couple of years ago, another department, advanced education, gave us money as a pilot to work with colleges and polytechs, to work with students, kind of be the liaison between the students graduating or in the last year taking courses and what are the industry needs in that particular sector. And so that's really morphed. I mean, when I started in 2006, if you thought we'd be doing this with college and universities, I would never imagine it. And now it's a really big part of integrating that into the whole genomics technology and the application of that for industry's benefits. And companies are saying to us, you know, we really like your technology. Who's going to deliver it for us? We don't have that training. So that opened a field for us, and actually I couldn't imagine how big a market that is actually, and it's international now. People are asking Canadians, and we're trying to retain those people, but there's a huge demand for people with that level of training.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, David. Mike.
Thanks. I'm not to pile on regulation, but I'm going to pick up a little bit on some of the things Steve was saying and maybe make a few other comments about it. But first, to give it its due, we should all be proud. Canadian regulation, by and large, is viewed as safe, and that's wonderful. But what we're not viewed as is fast, or not laborious, or not costly. And that throws up some barriers that not just in genomics, but more broadly speaking, holds us back, but particularly in genomics. And in one respect, it's a barrier to the innovators in particular, because I've worked with both large and small, and the best innovation happens at small organizations that are nimble and flexible and can move quickly. The cost and the time is a huge barrier. I can only think of a few examples in the last decade at least where I've seen someone get across the finish line with something novel. And don't get me wrong, our plants with novel trait approach has been brilliant, and it's served us well over the years. The challenge going forward, I believe, is we've become too reliant on government to tinker around the edges with it and think that will fix things for us. The opportunity lies in doing more than tinkering around the edges, and I think it's going to take a whole of society approach. It's going to take investments even beyond government, but it's a real opportunity if you think of it as painting a picture or a vision. Imagine what it would be like if you asked somebody else around the world in a peer country, what do you think of Canada? What are those guys known for? Oh, they're known for a regulatory system that is flexible, fast, not costly, and gets the job done and remains safe as well. I see that as such a huge differentiated advantage that could solve a lot of what we like to talk about as this dilemma between being really good researchers and really terrible commercializers. We beat ourselves up an awful lot on that. And I'll tell you what, if there's a lot of different things we could do with our resources, we could rebuild a regulatory system that we could all be proud of.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. Steve.
That was a great segue, Mike. Thank you, into what I'd like to say.
We didn't talk amongst ourselves.
I want to talk about, the progress that we're making towards commercialization. So in Ontario, we have a program that we brought out a couple of years ago, which we call BioCreate. BioCreate is an opportunity for 32 companies to receive funding from us in order to progress their innovation through, hopefully, to commercialization. But let me just tell you how we're going about that and the results that we're getting. So what we're really doing is, with our purview of the research innovation, we're taking a look at the companies that are presenting, and we're selecting and validating the technology as the most likely to get to commercial success. we're providing funding to those companies. Importantly, we're providing mentorship for 18 months through the period that I'll talk about in a minute. And then we're introducing those companies to next level funding. So really one of the key objectives that we are trying to solve for is making sure that the innovation within a corporate entity has got legs, likely to get into the market, and has the funding to move along the continuum and to build and scale. So that is our positioning in the ecosystem, is moving those companies along to the point where they have something. Are we doing our job? Jobs are being created in those companies. The follow-on funding that they're attracting is 15 times the level of investment that we're putting into them. And the interesting thing for me is that there is 8 times the demand. If think about, we're funding 32 companies, there's 8 times the demand with valid technology, which really showcases to me that the green shoots of an accelerating market are in place, but we're doing our job in moving that innovation along the spectrum.
Okay. Josette, what keeps you up at night?
Well, I don't think I need to convince this crowd of the importance of genomics. But one of the things that I worry about is whether or not non-experts can really truly benefit from everything that genomics has to offer. And I think some of my colleagues, actually quite a few of my colleagues, touch upon some of the barriers that might lead to that integration. So I won't be able to that point. But what I wanted to talk about a bit today is one of the programs that we've created at Genome Quebec to try to help integrate different genomic technologies into different fields. So we have a program that was started a few years ago called Genomics Integration Program, where we offer some funding, small amount, for pilot projects, for proof of concepts, to really help the companies and the end users integrate genomics into a wide variety of different applications in different sectors. And really the goal is to then be able to scale up and bring those programs or those projects into larger programs. And we've seen huge success. We've already funded 77 projects over the last few years. And for those of you who are interested, we just launched a competition in health, I think yesterday. I'm looking for Stephanie's nod, but yes, yesterday. So I think it's a great opportunity to really look at other ways to integrate genomics.
Awesome. What I love here is we obviously have a crew of serious problem solvers who, while lying awake at night worrying, are developing new programs to then attack those challenges. So that's awesome. Okay, so we're going to do one last question here, and maybe start looking ahead to the future, and ideally what you're optimistic about. We look back at the last 25 years, success stories. We've thought a little bit about some of the challenges we're all facing, but now let's think about kind of as we look to the next 25 years. What are you hopeful about? What are you excited about? What can we as a community sort of be doing to help realize that vision? And we'll just keep going in order here, Suzanne. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so this is really in my how I frame it in my head is Act 2, right? It's like Act 2 for Canada in genomics, and as Josette, you articulated, is really about now, how do you translate this body work into real applications, real world use, and have use cases, and in some cases that would drive commercialization or it may be public adoption. I'm very optimistic around public-private partnerships, and I think one thing I'm really keen on is taking everything we've learned in the human health area. We'll continue to do that investment. That is where a lot of the traction is being made. It takes a lot of funding. The adopters are generally the public health systems, which is challenging, and biotech will benefit as well. We have 5 of Canada's top 10 biotechs in Vancouver. It's the other areas as well that are still driving the economy. In BC, the top exports are coal, gas, copper, and then now lumber's number 4. Used to be number 1. So the reality is, when you're looking at a transition in a whole economy around a clean energy, you're looking at more mining energy projects. And so we need to tackle things like the biodiversity challenges we talked about, very important to protect the environment. But we also need to ensure that our genomic applications can help industry solve some pretty serious issues. Things like, what are you going to do with all the mine waste when you're basically going to double production of copper in the world? And so I think it was Lauren that highlighted, this pre-competitive partnerships with industry does matter. And that's where we do see investment in BC, for example, from tech, Rio Tinto, working with software companies that are doing things like the mining microbiome analytical platform. It's like the database for all microbes on mine sites that they can then take and do functional genomics. Like, can you go hunt for your biomining solutions in the future? So BC in Canada leads in this area, and that's in our area of opportunity. And we're just very fortunate enough in BC to have a little bit of extra money that we will go and do some follow-on work in these areas to demonstrate use cases. So, you know, Steve Hallam is doing work around, can you, from this mine waste, extract more copper? Because the cost of the commodity is going up, it's now making it economical to consider that. Can you look at, with Sue Baldwin's work, you know, creating a biofilm around these very nasty mine tailings, which is sand, silt, chemicals, and in some cases they're underwater, some cases they're above water, but if they're blowing out in the environment, very significant environmental impacts. So we're looking at how you create a biocement using naturally occurring microbes. And these are projects that companies are putting in 50-cent dollars. So I think these are the opportunities for the future, particularly in BC, because they are driving the economy right now, and those are just two examples.
Yeah, those are awesome. I love that. The bioengineering in like the mining sector is like totally mind-blowing, and something that I know when I talk to folks here in Ottawa, they, you know, it always shocks them. And this is a great example of innovation in clean technology. Steve.
So when I was thinking about this last night and the day before, my mind was going to critical minerals and offshore energy and hydrogen. And then at lunchtime today, I kind of pumped the brakes and reversed back and said, no, I'm going to look at this differently. Rather than looking at where is that future exciting opportunity, I think we'd all agree that there's going to be a more diverse, robust menu of opportunity. It's going to impact more and more parts of our lives. I think the more challenging question, more interesting one is how are we going to evolve to deliver greater impact given that reality of the menu of opportunity increasing? And I think if 25 years from now, we're still doing sector education events and being the first-in funder to de-risk a private sector investment, I'd say we failed. We have to change that model and do something more. So from my perspective, it's more exciting to imagine how our business model needs to evolve. And in the context of a scenario where, imagine it being unusual for any company not to have genomics hardwired into their long-term strategic plan. So a scenario where it's unusual not to have that. Imagine the breadth and the size of that opportunity that's created. And the challenge and the opportunity for all of us is to figure out how can our business model evolve to reflect that reality. And it circles me back to one of Rob's opening comments this morning. We are truly just getting started, and now it's time to raise the bar further.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. David?
So recent validation, January of this year, showed that the DNA sequencing market was likely going to, by 2032, was likely to be about $52 billion. So again, huge amounts of data being generated, opportunity for training, analyzing, and commercialization of that. So we think that's a huge opportunity for the country going forward. And then a couple of specific examples underneath that. Last fall, the Alberta government actually created a One Health AMR framework, formalized it. So to me, that whole approach, when you think of One Health, human health, animal health, and environmental health, and that connection between it, that understanding, getting people talking between different silos on that, saying, that's the root of this is somewhere else, and sharing that. And we've seen a huge change in the bureaucracy in Edmonton with that knowledge. All of a sudden, we've got people talking between departments on a common theme, which is a genetic or genomic base to it. So I've seen it really, really positive, and I think it's going to benefit all of us. Canada could take a global lead on that topic.
Thanks, David. Mike?
Thank you. And this might just be the most boring answer in the world, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the magic of incremental improvement. And we'll use an example of canola. It's been about 40 years since we did the first transformation in canola, and on average, we've increased the yield about 1 to 2% a year. And we're at a wonderful place now relative to where we were 40 years ago with that particular crop. Long and the short of it is there's no shortcuts in biology, but that doesn't mean you can't go there faster. And that is the promise that genomics truly brings. And to my earlier comments, if we truly can get the regulatory right, I think we have an unbeatable 1-2 punch with our research capacities and a really robust regulatory system. I would challenge any peer country in the world to meet what we are able to accomplish together. So incremental improvement is still going to be our pathway. There's few, with few exception, giant leaps forward that you can put your finger on and say, oh, remember when that happened? It's slow and steady dedication, and I think we are the right people to do it. We have just about the right personality to get this done properly.
Love it. Thanks, Mike. Steve, what are you optimistic about?
Yeah, so as I think about the next 25 years, Ontario has invested over $1.5 billion into genomic innovation up until this point. We've made a lot of progress over that period of time. We're seeing the application of genomic innovation broadening. I think that speaks to some of the strengths that Canada has in its economy. So I think there is huge economic opportunity for the country. 25 years is a long time. A lot can happen. The human genome was sequenced in that time. Since that's happened, we've done a lot with that innovation. So over 25 years, if we've invested $1.5 billion in Ontario, what should be the return on that? In my view, it should be minimum 10x in terms of a return to the country. That seems sizable, but I think that's totally doable in terms of the opportunity for us. I think we have an admired healthcare system in Canada. All of the evolution of technology within health is going to continue. I'm sure there'll be new developments from the research community in that area as well. I think probably the fastest growing segment is going to be the food and ag segment. At Ontario Genomics, we have a cellular agriculture report that's coming out in March that has some interesting data about market size by 2040 to support some of the numbers that I've just quoted. So take a look at that when it comes out. Terrific report, Canada-wide, and focuses on the broad opportunity with regard to cellular agriculture. And that's not even talking about natural resources, waste, and the applications there. So I think we have a huge opportunity in Canada to promote this research and bring GDP to the economy.
Awesome. Josette, last words to you.
Yes, so one of the areas where I see a lot of opportunities is with environmental DNA. It's been touched upon a little bit with this panel and also earlier today, but in Quebec we've developed a lot of expertise over the last 5 years working with the Ministry of Environment. I won't give the full name, it has too many letters. And we've developed a good protocol, and we've been able to develop some citizen science projects with that. So we have one program called ADNO or eDNA, where we've been going into high schools and helping students learn more about DNA by actually looking at eDNA sampling of rivers and lakes and looking at the biodiversity. And I hope that many of you have had the chance to stop by Noémie's booth to actually learn a little bit more about that program. An interesting aspect is we've also developed partnerships with Cree communities. So we've extended that program in northern Quebec, and we formed partnerships with First Nation, Métis, and we're hoping soon Inuit groups to look at how we can leverage that program in other communities. So I think there's a lot of opportunities of what we can develop in the coming years with eDNA.
Yep, I love that. So So this has been really great. I think many of you in the room obviously work very closely with your respective Genome Center on projects and so on. And so you perhaps have a sense of what's happening in your region. But when you get a chance to sort of get a survey like this from all the different centers and so on, you realize it really is a rich kind of broad set of activities across the country. And that is really in response to the changing conditions that exist in all of our respective provinces and regions. And it's not always easy to put it all together into a coherent whole, but that's true for Canada as a whole. And I am lucky to work with colleagues and their teams who are committed to both meeting those local needs while at the same time recognizing that national picture. And I'll also share that I've had on more than one occasion long-time sort of employees in the federal civil service who have said, there are very, very few examples of successful federal provincial initiatives that have lasted for 25 years. So the federal funding is only 40% of the total pot that goes into the projects that funded by Genome Canada. Never mind these independent things. And so, much like Canada itself, it sort of works better in practice than in theory. We were able to figure out how to get these pieces together. And it really is phenomenal to sort of see how the pieces fit together across the system. So, what that means, of course, is that keep working with your centers. If you have any questions or especially complaints, don't hesitate to let them know about that, and then we collectively will try to work that out. But for now, please join me in thanking my colleagues for their... Okay, and we are coming to the end here. We're going to, as these panelists leave the stage, we're going to have one final short presentation here, and we just have to transfer some microphones. I might actually ask, oh, Nicola's got it here. Just to say, I really do get inspired by the work that's happening across the country, and I had actually suggested that, given the sort of the sense of patriotism and the Team Canada approach, I actually suggested that all the CEOs grab their respective flags at the end and that we wave them at the front like Les Miserables or whatever, but Nicola shot the idea down. So I'm afraid we're not going to do that, but we are in for a treat here in a second. While we get ready for that, let me just first sort of close with a series of thanks and acknowledgements. First, I want to thank everyone here in the room for your time and your energy today. It has been a really successful event, but as great as the panelists were, and they were great, it's been the energy at the reception last night and through the various breaks and so on. It's felt like a reunion of sorts, a bit of a family reunion, and it's a testament to the community of genomics research in Canada. So thank you all for the energy that you've brought. I want to thank Elder Commanda for her thoughtful and kind words that put us on a good path this morning. I want to thank all of the speakers and moderators who joined us and provided very thoughtful remarks. Yasser Naqvi for making the time, and of course the whatever $170-some million. But making time to come out during what is obviously a very strange and difficult political time to come and really underline the commitment that this government has made to genomics in Canada. I want to recognize again the award winners who were recognized last night. Just a phenomenal set of researchers. Congratulate them again on our behalf for the work that they've done. Also want to thank Andre Picard for emceeing last night and doing such a phenomenal job. I want to thank everybody who's made the day itself possible. We've had great help from event planners, ASA Live. I want to thank the sound and AV folks who have kept this all going very smoothly. And of course, the Genome Canada staff, in particular, Nicola, Diana, Rosella, Sapna, Catalina, Wesley, and actually, frankly, everyone who's contributed to this. Really phenomenal work. And now I think we're ready for the last step. And this is a little bit, if I can just digress from my notes here to say on a personal note, I'm super excited for this because, of course, I am really jazzed by the science and technology that we have with genomics.
But some of you might know, actually, though I trained in biochemistry and genomics and did my PhD in that space, my undergraduate degree is actually in English literature. And so I have my first love is in the arts, and we are in for a treat here. We are going to end on a high note. Our closing session is actually a performance by leading Black Canadian poet Greg Frankson. He's going to deliver some brand new poetry that he has been composing here, reflecting on the themes of this inaugural Canadian Genomics Summit and the path forward that we see as a genomics community. So Greg's been here, he's been listening in, he's been absorbing this, and he's been composing this poetry on the fly, which is super cool. He does a lot of sort of speaking engagements. He's a real advocate as well, and he has actually recently published a book called Alphabet Soup, which you should have in your conference tote bag. So enjoy that. It now gives me great pleasure to invite Greg up to the stage. Greg.
All right. Hey, everybody. Let's try that again. Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, there you are. You're still with me. That's fantastic. Listen, the cold and the snow is happening outside. Let's try to stay warm inside here, shall we? There we go. So my name is Greg Frankson. I am an artist, a writer, and I am also the person who's been sitting here all day long writing poetry about genomics. I know that sounds a bit strange. It sounds a little bit out in left field. It is, and it doesn't matter. It happened anyway. I just want to take a quick moment to thank Genomics Canada and the team who put this thing together for inviting me to be part of this. I always like to engage in these kinds of events because it allows me to learn new things about things that I wouldn't necessarily be talking about in my day-to-day. And now I get the opportunity to go to people and say, listen, genomics is the future, son. Like, let me show you exactly what we're talking about here. And I've got all of this poetry that helps to point that out. I have literally written down onto 13 pages the amount of poetry that I wrote today. 'Tis true. Proof. Yep, she saw it. She saw the number. It says 13 at the bottom. And so it's a mix of short poems, haiku, and then some longer poems that I was able to gather from the various panel discussions and presentations that went on through the day. So I like to start with some haiku. For those who don't know, a haiku is typically structured as 5 syllables, then 7 syllables, and then 5 syllables. So they're very, very short. So when I say them, they don't take long. So just be prepared for their brevity. Okay. So the first one that I got was from the very, very beginning this morning, and it's very simple. Across Canada, we celebrate genomics in every quarter. See what I did there? That's it. Like, literally, that's it. I told you, they're brief. I think one that the parliamentary secretary would have really appreciated is this one, which goes, governments are delinquent students needing constant reteaching. But, you know, that's how we do. I have like 16 haikus, so I'm only going to read a few of them, okay? One that came from the panel, I think it was the first one, no, the second panel. In precision health, we can't afford to miss the genetic mark. Right? And then after lunch, you know, people were all excited and we're talking about how people haven't seen each other forever and whatever else. And so a haiku came to me, which goes, a science party. So many relationships regenerated. And then from one of the afternoon panels, to find our top gear, think about resilience as catalytic. That's it. That was one of those ones. Yeah, that's all good. And then, where's Christine? Was she still here? Oh, she had to go to the airport? That's too bad, because she was like a bubbling burst of energy up on the stage. And so I got a little haiku from her. I love the wildlife, livestock, birds, just the whole deal. Loves me some wildlife. That's it. That's it. And then there was some talk about, what was it, H5N1? Did I get the letters and numbers right? Okay, excellent. I mean, there's so many, H1N1, H2N3, I don't know. So I hope I got it right, yes? Excellent. Because I got a slightly tongue-in-cheek haiku from that. So, influenza. You ask me, who is Enza? Well, she's for the birds. I know, sorry, it's terrible, but I'm a poet. What did you expect? And then the final one that I got, just a final reflection on the fact that so many folks in all of the different panels, even amongst the illustrious leads of the regional networks, so many folks are from the farm. So I had to do a haiku about that. So many farm kids on the genome's cutting edge. Gene splicing? Stay tuned. So that's it. I know, terrible, right? Just terrible. That's all right. I'm a dad. What can I say? And then I get into some of the longer pieces. So this one I wrote after listening to Elder Commanda at the very beginning of the day, and I've called it Neighborhood Medicine. Into our beautiful homeland you come, elevated on the wings, given lift by ancestral breath, dusty feet stamped out on the welcome mat, step lightly across the threshold of a powerful new future. You came, we became neighbors. And when you gather with family from across mountains, beyond lakes, we make time to visit with one another, to learn more about what we know. When we share together, our voices become medicine for the spirit, the mind, the heart, and the body. From the four corners with the 7 ways of being and knowing and doing that grant extra lift beneath our wings, neighbors can become family, sharing stories and wisdom from every corner of our living, to roll forth as spokes in one wheel, bound as community, healthy and strong when we with vision and pride come together as one. Thank you. Where's Rob at? Oh, he's over here. Okay. So then Rob got up and spoke very excitedly for a while. So I wrote a quick little poem about him. Ironically, it's called This Is Awesome. Envision bold advancement, convergence of opportunities with global reach and impact. Corral the wild horses galloping forward as the feeders of rapid progress. The change that fuels revolution is coming. Are you not excited? There you go. Did I capture that? All right. And then you had a chat about some kind of a strategy with several millions of dollars over a 7-year period or some such thing. And so during that announcement, I wrote this poem, which is called In Twisted Sequence. At the forefront is Canada, a strategic innovation to lead the way for all nations. 1.6 billion created a foundation when science meets the challenge the world raises for us every day. Twin entwined helixes of the people linked to the passions of our genomics leaders will uplift the future of our environment, our biomes, and our humanity. Become the basis of where we need to be to thrive in our future. Creates the fuel for an economy that honors the building blocks used to construct our context without damaging pretext to empowering suspects we know to be usual. With a forward-oriented mindset, think beyond the now to what we can essentially be. Leaders amongst the nations concerned with mutual improvement that grows national ambitions to achieve this mission globally. All right, and then y'all had a little fireside chat. So this poem's from that. I'm gonna just fire through. I hope you don't mind. I'm on a roll, so this is how we feeling. All right. So this poem goes like this. Living in an era where systems are breaking down, the crumbling of the walls requires vigilance to not be crushed by a cascade of cracked cinder, challenging the bricks we laid at the foundation of our national identity. We can be the place where the stability of our works lead not to disintegration of social contracts and altruistic focus, but rather a land open to the hunt for opportunity, for conquering the challenges worth wrestling. And when the world comes knocking, looking for a place to stay dry and stay inclined to work to move ahead instead of quicksand ankle deep in a quagmire of brittle bricks with edges sharpened by societal fractures, we will invite them inside, close the solid maple door behind them, and greet a better future together. So then we had a little break and we had this really awesome panel. I'm going to use the word awesome throughout this. Thank you, Rob. I'm totally borrowing it for now. And the reason why I say that it was awesome because this panel also talked about things that were boring. And so, you know, as I gathered the thoughts and translated them, I came up with a title for this piece, which is called Boring Excitement Always Wins. Be aware that the next global pandemic, economically and ecologically devastating, does not care about unimpressive preparedness. Nor does climate change proceed in ways that are meant in any way imaginable to let us curl into comfortable sleep at night. Extratropical hurricanes in Atlantic Canada used to arrive on the coastline once in a blue moon, and now we feel them one by one with many more to come. It is more than the temperature that's going up. Perhaps it should be our level of alarm. And when innovation is no longer a team sport, we become a coterie of captaincies without any other skaters on the team. Though regulation of our overarching ethics to bring focus and fortune to our efforts permits prevention of pernicious interventions, we need to slice open the silos to elevate and cut across the grain to integrate cross-nationally and with global allies to harvest the journey's bounty. Let us get fired up about the boring bits that create the fundamental basis for the fun stuff. Huge potential for advancement often comes slowly. Take the big ideas that need time, energy, and treasure and nurture them in the face of conflictual dynamics to transform the opportunity into transformational realities. Fight through the biotic stresses to maximize and harness the power of the information at hand. Layer on the mortar that can weld together the walls that house the home for our future innovations instead of leaving them lying about uncoordinated, resources unconnected to the purpose of the project until they are integrated to form a whole function. Waste not what is about, lest another one finds the formula. We possess the skills and the knowledge to build, and clearly the time for action must be now. Increase probabilities for success because the priciest medicine is ineffectual. Increase efficacy to explode possibility and save more lives in reality. Talent is necessary for those successes to occur. Wherever they may have started their expositions, break down barriers to their ability to forge new strategies, new goals, new missions. When ecosystems have diversity, strengths become more widely seen and evident. Spur independent thought and creative pathways that to date have not been explored or prevalent. Bring the spirit of aspirational striving and apply our rigor to the best of our hypotheses to promote stronger growth in our fields of business, agriculture, and in our apothecaries. We need to graduate our thinking about how we prepare new people to our doing, and we can uplift our applications and research when funding sources are not adequately moving. Invest in the training necessary to get to the start line. When the startup finds its footing, must be the inclination before it reaches prime time. Too many do not make Too many do not make it to that level because support is needed on the upward climb to spark dynamism in a competitive race could only lead to results that are sublime. Ambition, collaboration, anticipation of new trends, entrepreneurial successes, possibilities never end. Feasibility is crucial to the mission and the plan. We need to ask that question seriously to meet a globe filled with hard demands. Our strategy must keep on shifting like sands blown across a drought-dry field. The years to come are filled with promise and the path to follow barely revealed. We've no choice but to step forward together and to boldly find a way before those restless, sleepless nights return to consume the best of our days. That's it. So the second panel got me thinking about rivers for some reason. I'm not sure what y'all were doing, Catalina, but y'all made me think about rivers. So this poem that I got from that is called The Vessel in Flow. Ours is a fundamental work of level setting to ensure our work cannot just revolutionize the mainstream, but also to view the so-called tributaries as simply mighty parts of a unified watershed that carry the biodiversity of the regions where the rivers find their genesis. To make our way together to a destination, we must begin by selecting the best vessel for the successful navigation of the waterway, and supplement it with the provision of a few life jackets to be placed inside the hull, differing shapes, designs, and sizes that can adapt more precisely to the needs of each occupant when initial interventions are needed. We bring along an emergency kit of supplies that has improved over time from simple bandages and ointments to the latest innovations that can account for whether the remedies are appropriate and helpful for the person who may require an acute intervention. And what of the flow of the river itself? With the influence of tides and heat or cold, erosion and terrains that surround the water, what are the influences that are deposited and not even noticed as affecting the quality, power, and clarity of the stream in progress that shape the way we can enjoy the benefits over the fullness of time yet to come? For all the dynamic power that the stream exerts upon the mud and stones, hills and grass, trees and shrubs, flowers and land animals, where any of the flora and fauna would perish without the life-giving hydrogen and oxygen splashing upon them all. The people who live along the shores make their own impacts on the waterways that can either ease or complicate the passage of anyone floating on the water. Is there space and access to those people through ports and docks where exchange of resources, ideas, and experiences can change the shape not just of the flow, but of the evolution of humanity's journeys around each bend along the way? With the vast diversity of aquatic vitality that rides the flow, binds its base, feeds the land, absorbs the waste and detritus of the earth, to push it along, to rest wherever it finds purchase, do the people in the vessel feed it or force it to adapt to new realities that imperil existence in ways both visible and covert, that ultimately undermine everything in contact if it is never addressed as the scourge it is to the beauty that lives unceasingly beneath the waves? Shall we find the way to dam the river, requiring folks to get out of their vessels and engage in portage around the blockages and blunts the unimpeded progression of underwater natural habitats? What does that look like based upon the relative strengths and weaknesses of the crew and passengers? Can we make our way if such damming is critical to the river's health, or if these interventions are meant primarily to benefit the people along the beaches, or perched atop the cliffs, or even living nearby in situations below the waterline? Who has plotted the course of the flow on the map, and has it remained constant over the years? Are there reversals or whirlpools, rapids or shallows or falls that impact the course of the journeys we can all take along the way? What of the cartographic rises and falls of the lands that caress the water and interchange at every footstep along the way? And in the process of creating the cartography, where are these maps posted, shared, and consulted? And who is the focus of these interests that then have the power to step into the ships that state a place for people to live and to exist? Can we afford not to understand nature's reach, symbolized by the fingers of the watershed as they wrap around the foundation of our vitality and supply it with its animation? We make choices based on wealth of saturation, of nutrients, of the life forms that agglomerate within the sphere of the stream's significant influence. And in the process of creating the new techniques, the new vessels, and apply the new resources to the management of the full ecosystem, we fail if we can't keep all of these considerations top of mind to encourage wary passengers to overcome their apprehensions, misconceptions, and animal fears that activate when they take a tentative first step into the vessel and allow their lives to be carried under our asserted power upon the waves that take us ever forward. That's it. So there are so many more poems that I wrote and so little time. So I'm just gonna jump right to the end because I believe that it's always the wise presenter who makes sure that whatever they've done that particularly talks about the leadership of an organization gets read aloud for everybody to hear. So I'm gonna talk about the poem that I wrote based on the final panel. And the rest of the poems I will be sharing with the organizers. Everybody who attended the conference will be able to have access to those poems. I am in a process of knowledge translation. So what I have shared is essentially what you have granted to me. So I feel like we all own it. And so I encourage you all to use it in your work going forward. And so I will just end by reading Round the Regions, which is what this last poem is called. Thank you all so very much. I look forward to meeting you. I hope to see you all again at other future events around the country, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. And I'm very much grateful to Genome Canada for having me here. So here we go, Round the Regions. 7 scientific revolutionaries peppered with regional flavors, seeking tangible positive impacts for all Canadians to savor. Whether making strides on cancer because we're jonesing for solutions, game-changing care the objective with only necessary intrusions, fixing hearts before they're broken, get back into rhythm with thriving, dispositions in advance, predisposed when gene therapies were arriving, gather data on our bloodstreams to get to the root of our ambitions and give health back to populations of various cultural traditions. And in agri-food, our institutes at the heart of strategic investing is an asset that is world-leading with a reputation beyond contesting. For health delivered with precision, addressing the scourge of rare disease, reduce solution times from years to weeks and days. More of this, please. Then to reflect on surges in demand as a global pandemic took vicious hold, the relationships forged in the crucible inspire our researchers to remain bold. To sell the power of genomics, stories told with unabated breath, in service to fund and friend-raising continues with excellence and depth. When we reach out in remote communities through programs in education, engage Indigenous populations through action plans that respect the First of Nations. And aquaculture, innovation remains the gold standard of objectives. In the face of antiquated regulation, new approaches must be tested. Place focus on how people graduate to study approaches we must deliver, train them for the work and to retain, keep the sharpest arrows in our quiver. Once armed, we must stay nimble to come with novelty in our designs, holistic rework, not tinkering at the edge. Intriguing opportunities aren't tough to find. Support in company of mentorship to help them market up to scale and move towards accelerated success. Reduce the number of firms that fail. With all these actions, there is a key to implement the best for public use, integrate advancements for us all based on innovations we produce. In 6 regions and the capital, the work simply abounds. The progress and investment glean results that shall resound. Commitments made from coast to coast inspire new ways to grow. The future bright in Canada, and we've got a long way to go. Thank you, everybody.
That was really great. Holy smokes, that was awesome.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So that obviously is something we should do again. And also, like in the spirit of reciprocity, if you can find an open mic night for poetry in your region, you can go and talk about like long tandem repeats and homologous recombination. I'm sure they would love that. I'm sure they would love that. Okay. Just to a couple final words. First, I just want to say, you know, honestly, I love this stuff. It's like Nerd Fest. It's so great. I really am like inspired and humbled to be able to be, you know, so stood on the stage here tonight, today, and I'm equally humbled to be the CEO of Genome Canada. It's like a dream come true. I get to see the future being invented every day as projects come across my desk, and we get to hear about the people that are inventing that future here, the staff at Genome Canada, the staff at the centers who are dedicating themselves fully to the sort of helping support the invention of that future. And the work of all of you in the room here, researchers, clinicians, industry folks, our government friends, and so on. And what really strikes me after all of this is that this really truly is a community. And it does take a community really to make change happen. So I'm very, very proud to lead Genome Canada, but I am equally proud, if not more proud, to be a member of Genomics in Canada. And the strategy announced this morning is going to go a long way to helping push us forward, inventing that future. As we've heard, we're celebrating 25 years, but we really are just getting started. There is so much more to do, so let's get back to work. Okay, awesome. Thank you all. Safe travels home.